Hello, we're here for a Global 20 interview. I'm here with Hans Pung, who is president of RAND Europe, a really interesting research organization based in Cambridge. And we're going to be talking a little about the work that RAND Europe does to produce data for decision makers. RAND Europe has interests across a whole swathe of vital questions that are afflicting the world at the moment, if a question can afflict. We're in a world that is on fire at the moment, it seems. There's war in Ukraine, there is the climate emergency, there's so much going on. There's also a pandemic, which has given us questions of resilience, questions of equality and inequality. So Hans, I'd like to talk to you a little about that, if I may. Let's consider how the pandemic might have impacted education, first of all. Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, so I think what we've clearly seen, because so many kids have been out of school and schooling's been disrupted, we've seen learning loss over periods of time. More learning loss in mathematics, numeracy than literacy. And we've certainly seen some disadvantaged groups seeming to be worse off than others. So it's affected everyone negatively, but disadvantaged groups, particularly younger and socioeconomically poorer, much more significantly.
And what are some of the things that are driving that difference between relatively advantaged and relatively disadvantaged learners?
Yeah, so some of it might be access to education and the types of education they have. Some of it may be around access to technology, and some of it may be around teacher quality. But there's a whole range of things that drive some of these, and we're only now starting to get access to some of the data and evidence to allow us to unpick that.
Got it. So the pandemic has certainly impacted how we experience education. It's affected as well our mental health, clearly pretty much across the board. But again, is there evidence that from RAND studies or from elsewhere that different populations have been affected disproportionately in that way?
So yes, absolutely. Again, everyone's mental health has suffered during the pandemic, and the evidence is very clear around that. But there are groups in the population which have suffered worse: women, younger people, people with pre-existing mental and physical health conditions, and people from disadvantaged backgrounds, lower socioeconomic status. Many of those things are also associated with ethnicity. And so there is some evidence when you collectively look at racial makeups that, again, those groups have suffered worse from a mental health perspective.
Okay, and tell us about the role of philanthropy in your experience in tackling some of these challenges, and how that might have changed over the last couple of years, over the pandemic, but also the trends that you see in philanthropic funding.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, because what I've seen over the last 20 years is a much more collective importance of getting both public funding, private funding, and philanthropic funding combining in their own unique ways, because each of them do slightly different things, but collectively combining to try to solve some of these challenges. And I think today, more than ever, it's important to have this kind of multiplicity of efforts and funding to address pressing societal issues.
Superb. Hans, thank you very much. That's been a terrific introduction. Hans and I conducted a much longer interview than this, a 20-minute-ish interview, in which a lot of those issues were explored at greater length. If you're interested, do find that longer interview. Again, part of the Global 20 series of interviews for Global Philanthropic's 20th anniversary. Hans, thank you so much.
Great, thanks.